Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Chen Yun. Here are today's top stories. Over 800,000 COVID-19 cases reported in the U.S. in a single day, a new global record. The White House responds to the surge in the Omicron variant by ordering more Pfizer pills. New York hospitals make a major change to their COVID-19 hospitalization reporting. Starting today, they're distinguishing between patients admitted with COVID-19 and those admitted because of it. Drivers in Virginia found themselves stranded overnight after snow and traffic left a major section of I-95 deadlocked. The highway was still closed late this afternoon. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is ramping up momentum for a bill to broaden the federal government's oversight of elections. Joining other Democrats today on Capitol Hill, he explained his strategy to change the Senate rules to get the bill through. A judge will soon decide if the sexual assault civil lawsuit filed against Prince Andrew will be dismissed. The prince's lawyer says the lawsuit should be thrown out because of a previously confidential settlement involving convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. New COVID-19 cases in the U.S. hit a record high, over 800,000 in a single day yesterday. The White House today urged concern but not alarm. President Biden says he's ordering an additional 10 million courses of COVID-19 pills from Pfizer.
As COVID-19 cases hit record highs in the U.S., President Biden announced Tuesday that he's ordering more COVID pills from Pfizer.
I'm directing my team to work with Pfizer to double our order from 10 million to 20 million treatment courses to be delivered in the months ahead. We may need even more. That's the estimate we need right now. We've already placed the largest order in the world.
According to the CDC, the Omicron variant now makes up around 95% of all COVID cases in the U.S. But while case numbers doubled compared to a week ago, hospitalizations were not as high compared to the peak of the pandemic a year ago. The number of new virus deaths has also been stable over the past month.
Look, we have no reason to think at this point that Omicron is worse for children than previous variants. We know that our kids can be safe when in school, by the way. That's why I believe schools should remain open.
The World Health Organization said on Tuesday that they are seeing more evidence that Omicron causes milder symptoms than previous variants, but they add that they need more studies to prove it.
Starting today, New York hospitals will distinguish between patients admitted with COVID and those admitted because of COVID in their reporting. The change comes as more government leaders and health officials have begun acknowledging the importance of this distinction. Here are the details.
New York hospitals must now clarify whether COVID-positive patients come to the hospital because of COVID symptoms or due to some other ailment. Governor Kathy Hochul announced a major adjustment to hospitalization reporting Monday.
We talk about the hospitalizations. I have always wondered, when we're looking at the hospitalizations of people testing positive in a hospital, is that person in the hospital because of COVID, or did they show up there and are routinely tested and showing positive, and they may have been asymptomatic or even just had the sniffles? Someone is in a car accident, they go to the emergency room, they test positive for COVID while they're there. They're not there being treated for COVID.
Hochul said she called multiple hospital leaders and heard that in some cases, 20 to even 50% of COVID-positive patients were admitted for a different reason. In other words, admitted with COVID rather than because of COVID. Hochul said the change in reporting comes down to being honest with New Yorkers. She noted case numbers are high, but says she wants to see whether hospitalizations correlate with the numbers. Also on Monday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis noted the importance of hospitals making this distinction.
When you have a variant like Omicron, which is much more widespread, you are going to have people who get into a car accident and go into the emergency room, they're swabbing everybody, and you're going to have people that have incidental positives.
He pointed to Jackson Health System in Miami, one of the state's largest hospital systems, which has already implemented the practice. DeSantis said the hospital system anticipates that about half of their COVID-positive patients are not being treated for the virus. Public health officials have recently made similar comments. White House pandemic advisor Anthony Fauci said last week that child COVID hospitalizations are actually being overcounted because this distinction isn't being made. These recent acknowledgments mark a significant change in discussion around COVID numbers. For months, skeptics of government pandemic policies have speculated that overall virus deaths and hospitalizations may be inflated due to a lack of such distinctions. The U.S. has seen a daily average of 486,000 virus cases over the last week. However, studies and data suggest that Omicron causes less severe disease and fewer hospitalizations than previous variants.
In a letter to its workers, Focus on the Family says it'll comply with President Biden's vaccinate or test requirement. But enforcing the mandate could cost the renowned Christian organization and radio broadcast tens of thousands of dollars. That's because some donors say they're willing to take their money elsewhere if this mandate is enforced.
All the vaccines we need.
In less than a week, President Biden's OSHA mandate will kick in for large companies. By January 10th, businesses with 100 or more workers must submit the vaccination statuses of their employees to the federal government. Focus on the Family, a Christian organization and radio broadcast founded nearly 50 years ago, has said it'll comply. In a letter to his employees, President Jim Daly said, "While we have been holding off in the hope that the OSHA rule would be stayed or overturned, the courts have most recently sided with the administration, and the Supreme Court has not issued a stay as of today." He then said refusing to do so could cost Focus and the Family multiple millions of dollars in fines. Daly said he would rather see that money be used to help families. Under the OSHA mandate, workers must be either vaccinated or tested weekly by February 9th. Plus, the unvaccinated are required to mask up. But some donors scorn Focus's decision to comply. On condition of anonymity, one donor told us he gives around $25,000 to $30,000 a year to the organization. Starbucks, another large company subject to the mandate, recently announced that it'll also comply with the federal vaccine mandate. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
The King and Queen of Sweden have tested positive for COVID-19, the palace said in a statement. The statement read, "The King and Queen, who are fully vaccinated with 3 injections, have mild symptoms and are feeling well given the circumstances." The palace said the King, aged 75, and the Queen, aged 78, are self-isolating. Meanwhile, they're working to trace those who the royal pair was in contact with. Drivers on a highway in Virginia have been stranded for hours in snowy conditions. Late this afternoon, rescue efforts were still underway. Here are the details. Drivers in Virginia found themselves stranded overnight after snow and traffic left a major section of I-95 deadlocked. Cars stopped moving on the interstate on Monday, and sections of the highway were still closed Tuesday afternoon. Many people didn't have food or water and had to keep their engines on to keep warm, at the cost of using up their gas reserves. Senator Tim Kaine was among those stranded. He tweeted this morning, "I started my normal 2-hour drive to D.C. at 1 p.m. yesterday. 19 hours later, I'm still not near the Capitol." The backup was originally caused by tractor trailers getting stuck in the snow. The Virginia Department of Transportation said snowplows and tow trucks were making progress on the jam, with crews planning to start taking people off at available interchanges. The Virginia Department of Transportation says now that there are no more motorists stranded on the highway. Democrats on Capitol Hill are using this week's anniversary of January 6th to ignite their push for a national voting rights law. Today, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told reporters that the path forward is to change Senate rules to get the bill through. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports from Capitol Hill.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is using every opportunity he can get to get his message across that election reform must happen. In 3 separate on-camera appearances today, Schumer repeated that the stakes are high. He and other Democrats are trying to draw a parallel between the need for federal-level election reform and last year's Capitol breach. Let's hear what they're saying about this.
The election subversion efforts we're seeing all across the country today are a direct continuation of January 6th and the big lie.
That's what's going on. The Freedom to Vote Act sets basic federal minimum standards that says it's safe to vote.
Now, Democrats say this bill is needed to give voters easier access to the ballot box. It's in direct response to Republican-led states passing election laws to reform their own elections, how they run their elections. But essentially what this bill in Congress would do is it would set national requirements for elections, essentially giving the federal government more of a say over how states run their elections. Now, Republicans are blocking this bill from reaching Biden's desk. So Senate Leader Schumer says the new path forward is to change the Senate rules so Democrats can pass this election reform bill on their own.
We have no choice but to move forward. And rules have been changed in the past, and that's an important point we're making to Senators Manchin and Senator Sinema.
But even taking this approach doesn't seem to be an easy win for Democrats. That's because Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are reserved when it comes to changing the Senate rules with a simple majority vote. So even taking this path seems to be a stretch for Senate Leader Schumer here. Now, aside from that, what's also a stretch is passing Biden's Build Back Better bill. Senator Manchin today says that he's currently not in negotiation talks with the White House about this. Here's Manchin today expressing why he's a holdout vote on both of these Democratic priorities.
Our country is divided, and I don't tend to do anything that divides our country anymore. So whatever I can do to unite and bring people together, and that means you have to work harder as you work across the aisle to bring people together.
Schumer today did say he was meeting with Senators Manchin as well as 8 other senators so they could discuss voting rights and hopefully make a path forward for this. But as to whether those negotiation talks were successful, it's still unclear.
Thursday is the one-year anniversary of the January 6th Capitol breach. Capitol Police say they're not concerned about any events planned for that day, but they emphasize the police force learned from its failures last year. NTD's Allison Lee has more.
U.S. Capitol Police Chief Tom Menger said on Tuesday that his force is much better prepared now after the events of January 6th last year. He says he's not concerned about this year's January 6th anniversary.
We've gotten we're aware of several events that are planned for Thursday. Most of them aren't of much concern to us. There's no intelligence that indicates that that there would be any problems.
The police chief lists several areas that the force improved on over the past year, namely intelligence, event planning, and coordination with other law enforcement agencies.
Since the attack on the Capitol, there have been nearly a dozen reports offering over 100 recommendations on needed improvements and reforms. To date, we have completed or addressed over 90 of those recommendations.
Menger says the Capitol Police have improved the way they gather, analyze, use, and share intelligence. They've done massive joint exercises ahead of major events, given each officer a cell phone to get daily intelligence, and conducted exercises with the National Guard and other police agencies. Allison Lee, NTD News.
An exodus from big tech. That's what Senator Rand Paul is calling his move to quit YouTube. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Big tech will do anything to suppress the voices it disagrees with.
Senator Rand Paul's New Year's resolution is to quit YouTube for good. The Kentucky Republican announced in a Monday op-ed that he will stop posting anything on YouTube unless it's to decry its censorship.
I've seen it time and time again.
Paul calls the decision part of his exodus from big tech. He accuses YouTube of censoring his constitutionally protected speech, even though he says it's fully sourced and fact-based content.
If there's one thing the left and the right tend to agree on, it's a distaste for social media and big tech.
Paul received 2 strikes from YouTube last year over videos YouTube said violated its COVID-19 misinformation policy. His account was suspended twice. But Roy Gutterman, Syracuse University professor and director of Telecenter for Free Speech, says he wouldn't call it censorship.
And there's a far cry from a private media company enforcing its own standards versus big government coming in and saying, no, you can't talk.
But Paul says the legal right for private businesses to censor content does not make their behaviors any less despicable. He adds it restricts the decision-making ability of young people who exclusively use these platforms for their news.
We don't have red flags go off in our head when this kind of behavior takes place in America today because we weren't taught that this behavior was red flag worthy or red flag material to begin with.
Morgan Zegers is the founder of Young Americans Against Socialism. She says big tech censorship is making more people turn away from using it, like Paul did.
And so when somebody who's leading at the national stage, like Rand Paul, encourages people to do this, I think we're going to see a wave.
Paul encourages people to move to other platforms where less restrictions are imposed. Iris Tao, NTD News.
A judge will soon decide if the sexual assault civil lawsuit filed against Prince Andrew will be dismissed. The prince's lawyer says the lawsuit should be thrown out because of a settlement made between the accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein in 2009. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Prince Andrew, a member of the British royal family, is accused of sexually assaulting Virginia Giuffre. Giuffre says Prince Andrew sexually assaulted her multiple times in 2001 when she was introduced to him by convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Prince Andrew has continually denied the allegations. In 2009, Giuffre received $500,000 in a settlement agreement with Epstein. The previously confidential document was made public on Monday. In the settlement deal, Giuffre agreed to not pursue legal action against Epstein or any other potential defendant. On Tuesday, both sides argued over who counts as a potential defendant. Prince Andrew's attorney said a potential defendant is someone who could have been named as a defendant in the lawsuit, but was not. Prince Andrew was not named, meaning the terms of the agreement protects the prince from being brought to court. Giuffre's attorney said a third party cannot say what the purpose of the contract was, since they were not party to the contract. Prince Andrew didn't even know about this release until recently, meaning the only parties who would know what was exactly intended in the contract were Giuffre and Epstein. U.S. District Judge Louis A. Kaplan heard the arguments remotely and said he would make a decision on the motion to dismiss the lawsuit soon. The judge also said that if Epstein's lawyers wanted to prevent Giuffre from suing any person or entity involved in any way in sexual activity with Epstein or others, it would have been easy to say it. Also, the two prison guards that admitted to falsifying records on the night of Epstein's death had their charges dismissed. Epstein died of an apparent suicide in a Manhattan prison in August 2019. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, Californians and even the government could sue gunmakers if a new bill makes its way into the legislation. Lawmakers say the bill intends to prevent illegal gun sales and violence. And in the NFL, a former superstar player is finally opening up, releasing a much-anticipated documentary of his legendary career. More in a moment when we return on NTD News. New York City officials say small businesses are having a hard time surviving, especially during the pandemic. Now, the new mayor says he wants to make life easier for them. NTD's Ariane Pazdar has more on the city's proposed reform.
New York City has almost 250,000 businesses, and 98% of those are small businesses. Now, the city's new mayor, Eric Adams, says that city agencies are giving out too many fines to these small businesses. He signed an executive order aimed to change that.
I signed executive order to reform small business violation, slash red tape, reduce needless fines and penalties.
He says some fines are outdated or the penalty is too high. The new deputy mayor gave some examples.
Failure to clean 18 inches from curb into street, that's a $100 penalty. Excessive noise created by an air compressor, that's a $560 penalty.
Mayor Adams also pointed out that while many rules are necessary, businesses should be given a warning before getting fined.
Warnings for first-time violations. You just open a new business, you make a mistake, you should not be hit with a fine that's going to prevent you from keeping your doors open.
The mayor is giving each city agency 3 months to look at the fines they give out the most. The agencies will then have to get rid of the fines or reform the process of issuing them. Ariane Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
Politicians in California announced a new bill today that will allow the government and citizens to sue the gun industry. They say it's to prevent illegal gun sales and theft, reducing gun violence. NTD's David Lamb reports.
California Assembly members introduced the new Gun Industry Responsibility Act on Tuesday morning in a virtual conference. Under Assembly Bill 1594, individuals, the state, and counties will be able to sue gun manufacturers and dealers if their failure to follow federal, state, or local laws caused injury or death, or if the gun industry member engaged in unfair business practices.
Almost every industry in the U.S. is held liable for what their products do. So if you have a defective toy, if your car has a problem, those manufacturers are held responsible for what happens and what their products do.
State Assemblyman Ting said they've worked on this legislation since last July, and they aim to save lives and reduce homicides.
The gun industry is the one exception. In California, AB 1594 will change that.
This bill would allow people to pursue civil claims against the gun industry.
We know that gun dealers on the whole are not engaging in dangerous business practices, but that there are a small minority of them that are. This means that they could be selling to people who are known straw purchasers, who are then trafficking firearms into communities that are disproportionately impacted by gun violence.
The authors hope to finalize the bill language this month, with hearings likely to start in spring. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
A Southern California city saw 4 opioid overdose-related deaths throughout the city, all occurring within 1 hour. Police say investigations are ongoing, but the drug is suspected to be fentanyl. NTD's Cynthia Kai has the details.
4 people reportedly overdosed on opioids and died within an hour of each other in Anaheim, California on Monday. Police say they suspect fentanyl or fentanyl-tainted drugs to have caused the deaths. The first was at 11:40 a.m. Officers responded to a deceased female in a motel room in the 800 block of South Beach Boulevard. Then at about 12:05 p.m., officers responded to a deceased male in the 1700 block of South State College Boulevard.
About an hour after the first call, we received the third call, which was of 3 male adults that were out on the street, or as the sidewalk, as it were, at the intersection of Anaheim and Water. Officers arrived on scene. 2 of those adult male victims were pronounced deceased on scene. There was a third that was administered Narcan.
He was transported to the hospital in critical condition.
Now, in the sense of any foul play, meaning that this was anything other than a purposeful ingestion of drugs by the victim who then overdosed in turn, no, there's nothing to indicate that any of these people were forced to take or ingest the drugs.
Carringer says investigations are still ongoing, but police suspect the deaths were opioid overdoses based on the type of drug equipment found at the scenes of the deaths.
I'm not talking about a pharmaceutical grade fentanyl that does have a legitimate medical application. I'm talking about illicit fentanyl that's sold on the street. It didn't exist, until a number of years ago. But it does seem that fentanyl has found its way, whether purposely or by accident, into a variety of other drugs that you wouldn't expect to see it in. And I think that's what's causing some other accidental exposures and overdoses.
Since 2013, China has been the primary source of fentanyl exports to the U.S. illicit drug market through firms with special licenses granted by the Chinese Communist Party.
We're living in a day and age where a lot of these drugs are tainted with substances that you are not expecting to come in contact with, and it can be fatal.
Both the Obama and Trump administrations had previously pressured the CCP to crack down on the production and exports of the drug. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
The San Francisco mayor and several city officials gave updates on the city's Omicron situation. They also said what they expect to happen in the next few weeks. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
The ability to continue.
On Tuesday, San Francisco Mayor London Breed, along with representatives from the health, police, and fire departments, shared updates related to COVID-19. They emphasized the newer Omicron variant, which has been shown to be the most contagious of the variants.
Today, our 7-day average case rate is 829 cases per day, which is more than double last winter's peak.
Despite sounding the alarm, the mayor also said that the Omicron variant is less severe than the previous variants.
The city and hospitals are in a much better place to be able to handle the current surge, which is expected to peak in the coming weeks. The mayor also mentioned that there are currently several police, fire department, and transit staff in quarantine.
And as of yesterday, we have 167 police officers who are quarantined, and we have 135 members of the fire department in quarantine, and almost 100 people in our SFMDA department, which some of those folks are Muni operators.
While the mayor said that some patients might be needed, city services will be running more or less as usual. Some staff will be working overtime to cover for their colleagues who might be sick. Breed was asked about the economic impacts that the city will be facing.
It is definitely going to impact our economy, but I think as we come out of this next surge, what we will see is the ability to continue to come together, reduce some of the regulations that we've imposed, and start to get back to a level of normal or adjustment in terms of how we're living.
The city's leaders say that while Omicron poses different challenges than the Alpha or Delta variants, they expect to get through them fairly quickly. Jason Blair, NTD News, San Francisco.
Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Montana won 4 Super Bowls during his heyday in the 1980s. But he's remained out of the spotlight since retiring after the 1994 season. Until now, starting Thursday night, the Peacock streaming service will premiere a 6-part documentary of his life called Cool Under Pressure. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
Joe Montana, nicknamed Joe Cool for his play on the game's biggest stage, gives a rare behind-the-scenes look at his legendary career in this new documentary.
No, it was always pretty private about a lot of the things, and that's why it took a while to kind of get me to the point, well, okay, and some of it was tough to do, but in the end, I think it'll be interesting for people to see the things that took place inside.
The documentary features behind-the-scenes stories from his career, as well as interviews by Jerry Rice, Steve Young, George Seifert, Ed DeBartolo, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Magic Johnson, and Ken Griffey Jr.
I mean, when I watched some of the interviews, I went, oh my gosh. I didn't know he was being told this. This is the guy I was competing with, and we were being told different things.
Montana's documentary premiere will coincide with the 40th anniversary of what's simply known as The Catch, the infamous Montana to Dwight Clark touchdown pass that led them to their first Super Bowl. Sadly, Clark passed away in 2018 from ALS, which the late receiver suspected was due to head trauma from playing football.
To watch, the suffering that he went through, it was hard on all of us.
Montana was no stranger to injuries himself, missing nearly 2 seasons after a Leonard Marshall hit in 1991, paving the way for eventual Hall of Famer Steve Young to take over in his place. Young and Montana were always rumored to be at odds, and the hope is this documentary sheds some light on their relationship, among other untold stories. Dave Martin, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, an iPhone and an iPad exchanged for a bag of rice, and 2 packs of cigarettes traded for some vegetables. That's in the Chinese city of Xi'an today, as residents turn to bartering during lockdown. And another Chinese city with a population in the millions is going on lockdown. The local authorities have ordered residents not to take a single step outside their homes. That and more here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
You worked hard for your money. You invest in stability for your retirement and your family's future, to build and leave them with something greater. The next unprecedented financial crisis, political misstep, or unstable government can depreciate it all away. It was called the gold standard for a reason. The financial preservation of tomorrow. Diversify your assets against inflation, market volatility, and the unknown with real money. Hedge your wealth with the purest form of money, physical gold and silver. Because any currency printed on paper can be manipulated. What's backing up your IRA? Do what you need to do right now to be prepared with the Reagan Gold Group. Visit now, rggusakit.com, or call us at 866-912-1384. Receive up to $2,500 in free silver coins and a free safe with your new precious metals IRA. Call now.
Would you be willing to trade an iPhone for a bag of rice? Well, in the Chinese city of Xi'an, they don't have a choice. Residents are now bartering goods in order to feed themselves. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
Some residents in China's Xi'an city have started trading goods for food. That's as strict pandemic restrictions have made it hard for locals to buy kitchen staples. For 2 weeks, the northern Chinese city has observed lockdown orders. At the beginning, one person per household was allowed outside once every 2 days to shop for food. But a week into the policy, authorities tightened the rules, banning even these brief, infrequent trips outside the home. This measure is supposed to prevent pandemic from spreading. The city is now a hotspot for virus cases and boasts a total population of nearly 13 million people. Local authorities promised to supply food and other essentials amid the total shutdown. But a number of residents are complaining on social media, saying there's a lack of food and insufficient service from authorities. To cope, some of them have started bartering. One video shows a person trading with her neighbor, handing over a bag of rice for an iPhone Plus and iPad.
你好。你好。这个手机一个平板。我家就带米了，菜没有了。行。
One comment on the video reads, "If it were me, I might not put the rice up for trade." Another video shows a man exchanging 2 packs of cigarettes for a head of cabbage. And much to the delight of the man receiving the vegetable, he's given an extra tomato and carrot as a bonus. A photo posted online reveals what authorities are delivering to residents. These vegetables are meant to feed one household for 2 days. Another picture shows officials holding a banner with packages of food stacked behind them. According to the person who took the photo, the officials gathered to take the photo but left soon after, taking the food with them. The situation also seems to extend beyond food. One video has sparked concern online. It shows a woman crying in quarantine as she begs for feminine hygiene products.
还有，我来大姨妈了，也没有卫生巾。 我从昨天开始一直打12345的社长热线，然后没有人能处理这个事情，报警也没有人过来接我。
Yet another Chinese city is being locked down. This is according to a local Communist Party statement on Monday. Authorities in Yuzhou City, Henan Province, are ordering all 1 million residents to self-quarantine. The statement says that no one is to take a step outside their homes. Despite the strict measures, authorities said on Tuesday that they don't know the number of cases in the city. But they said that the virus control and prevention situation in the city is very severe. Vehicles are banned from going outside as well. That's unless they have clearance from virus control officials. Authorities are also halting activities in supermarkets apart from the supply of daily necessities. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Henan Province, cities are enforcing similar pandemic measures due to a rise in new virus cases. Local authorities announced that they'll be restricting residents' movement in parts of Zhengzhou City and Taikang County. Virus control measures in these areas include keeping residents at home, banning public gatherings, restricting entry into the region, suspending certain businesses, and virus testing. Authorities are only allowing residents to leave their homes once every 2 days to buy groceries.
Up next, the French government is working on legislation to bar all unvaccinated citizens from entering restaurants and boarding trains. but there's strong resistance to the proposed law. And about 1,000 residents on the Spanish island of La Palma are finally returning home. It's been 3 months since a volcanic eruption forced them to leave. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News. The French government is working on legislation that will prevent all unvaccinated citizens from entering restaurants and boarding trains. But there's strong opposition to the proposed law. NTD's David Vivez has more on this.
Lawmakers from France's ruling party on Monday debated a bill that, if passed, would mandate vaccination to enter a restaurant, a hospital or take the train. Until now, France has enforced a Covid-19 health pass, which requires people to show a recent negative test or proof of vaccination. The new legislation would remove the option of showing a negative test. The 7-hour debate saw contention from parties at both ends of the political spectrum. Discussions in Parliament were halted around midnight on Monday after a majority of deputies voted to suspend the session. Lawmakers supporting the bill were caught by surprise and didn't have the number present in the chamber to block the motion to suspend. French MP Martin Vonner says this bill marks a turning point with the removal of people's personal freedoms.
This bill will plunge France into totalitarianism. The vaccine is not a mandate for now, and it never should be.
The proposed tightening of the rules has angered anti-mandate activists and prompted fierce resistance from within both the political left and right. Protesters gathered on Monday evening near the National Assembly.
I'm protesting against the mandatory vaccination, that everyone is free to do as they see fit, and that we regain our freedom.
According to Vonner, a lot of French who got the first 2 injections have refused to get the 3rd jab.
These people will become excluded from society. They will be excluded from getting onto a bus, a train, or going to a restaurant. Society will become locked. This is unbearable.
The bill will be voted on again after a new debate this evening. Vonner says it's very likely the bill will find massive support from the French government group at the Assembly. David Vives, NTD News.
3 times as many migrants crossed the English Channel in small boats in 2021 compared to the year before. That's despite huge UK investment in France to prevent crossings.
Total figures compiled by the BBC show over 28,000 people made the crossing in 2021. In 2020, about 8,000 people made the same crossing. The number of arrivals peaked in November when almost 7,000 reached the UK. The same month topped the record for the highest number of migrants arriving by boat in a single day at 1,185. In 2020, the number was less than half that at just 416. November last year also saw 27 people die as their boats sank as they tried to cross the channel. The government says their new Nationality and Borders Bill will make it a criminal offence to enter the UK illegally. It would also introduce life sentences for people smugglers. The bill is due for its second reading in the House of Lords tomorrow.
For 86 days, red-hot lava spilled out of the volcano of the Spanish island of La Palma. It destroyed thousands of houses and many of the banana plantations, a mainstay of the island's economy. Now that the eruption is declared over, residents are returning. Even for those who didn't lose their homes, there's a lot of rebuilding to do, and a mammoth cleanup operation is underway. More from NTD's Eddie Atkin.
About 1,000 residents on the Spanish island of La Palma were allowed to return home on Monday after they were forced to leave due to the 3-month-long volcanic eruption. Carmen and her husband came back home after almost 4 months.
I felt happiness as I opened the door, but my feelings are mixed. I'm sad for those left behind. But I have hope we can all return and start over again. Not start again, continue. Carry on with life and go forward.
For 86 days, red-hot lava spilled out of the crater of the volcano, carving a destructive path to the ocean that buried almost 3,000 houses. Lava also destroyed many of the banana plantations that accounted for nearly half the island's economy. No one was killed. The volcano suddenly went quiet on December the 14th. The authorities, weary of raising false hope, held off until Christmas Day to give the all clear. Of the 7,000 people evacuated, Most have returned home, but many houses that remain standing are uninhabitable due to damage from ash. A mammoth cleanup operation is underway. Emergency services must also confirm areas are free of toxic gas and check the structure of buildings.
Most likely, the first few days will be used for cleaning and moving things back in. But after that, people will most likely be settled again. The water supply has been reconnected, and we are doing that in the lower part of La Laguna too, because we want all residents to return.
The eruption expanded the size of the island by more than 48 hectares. It was the longest on La Palma, according to records dating back to the 16th century. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Movie streaming is a big business and growing, but many streaming platforms are actually unprofitable. But media groups continue to plow money in by the billions. NTD's Evelyn Lee asks why.
The top 8 U.S. media groups will spend at least $115 billion this year on new streaming content, according to the Financial Times. That's although video streaming loses them money. And on top of that, there are concerns that subscribers won't be growing much in 2022. So why would any company do that?
Well, they're really looking at the long-term game. The business model is to get you as a consumer addicted to the streaming platform and then start to raise the prices.
The CEO of Centerpost Media says the way we watch TV has also changed. And in the end, companies will follow whatever the viewer will do. But according to the Financial Times report, right now companies like Walt Disney, Comcast, Warner Media, and Amazon will see losses when it comes to their streaming business. Jeffrey Harmon is the chief content officer at Angel Studios. He says that many of the companies are in an early phase of what Netflix went through as well.
When you look at Netflix, they didn't make money for decades, was it like 14 years or something? I don't remember the exact, but they've just reinvested and reinvested and reinvested.
Although through debt, Netflix built up a big audience and became profitable. Miller calls media a high-stake poker game that could bring a lot of money if successful.
The major studios have always wanted to own the distribution platforms. That's why they invested in movie theaters. It's why they invested in radio networks and broadcast TV networks. And it's why they're investing in streaming platforms today.
But for the future, Harmon thinks that production costs will need to be spread across more people.
It's around ownership to where the community, the viewers own the content that they are watching. So if you want to make, like The Chosen is an example, the best example, 19,000 people got together, said we want this show to exist.
Miller has a similar take. He says major studios need to figure out a taxation model similar to cable TV. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Consulting firm Accenture says that social commerce is growing fast and will level the playing field between the e-commerce giants and small businesses. More from NTD's Evelyn Lee.
The social commerce market is exploding. That's what Accenture found in a recent study. And apparently it will grow to make up almost 17% of all e-commerce by 2025. Why? A general manager at TikTok called it word of mouth on steroids.
But you have to know who we are to come to our website. With social media, you can find us through a hashtag. You can find us through working with someone else. And so it is day and night.
People trust recommendations from their family and friends and get inspired by them. And now influencers can also play that role. Sanchez is a marketing manager and entrepreneur. She founded a nonprofit and says 90% of her sales in 2021 came from social media.
And we don't even have a large following. We really don't. And it's just the power of being able to have these partnerships with other people that are able to wear our shirts or hoodies or express our kids' boxes or our craft books. And so really leveraging that, people are able to shop directly.
Accenture says that social e-commerce actually levels the playing field for small businesses. It gives them easier access to more customers. In its survey, the consulting firm found that almost 60% of users are more likely to buy from smaller brands when shopping on social media. Not only that, Sanchez says it also helps to bring her brand to life.
I think that you can read something on a website. You can read a product description or whatever it is. But when you're physically seeing it, the day of the life, the brand's language.
Suketu Gandhi is a partner at management consultancy firm Kearney. He told Business Insider he thinks that the website is dead. He says it's unimaginative and boring, so there has to be a more interactive and personal experience. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
A painting by Renaissance artist Botticelli is expected to fetch more than $40 million when it goes up for auction this month in New York. The Man of Sorrows is a depiction of Christ and has been held in a private collection for almost 60 years. NTD's Earl Rhodes has the story.
One of the last great masterpieces by Italian painter Sandro Botticelli. It's a portrait of Christ, complete with crown of thorns around his head and stigmata on his hands. The Man of Sorrows was painted sometime around the late 15th or early 16th centuries.
It's extremely rare to have works by Botticelli come on the market, particularly when they're of this quality, and this work in particular hasn't been seen on the market since the early 1960s.
The head of the Department of Old Masters Paintings at Sotheby's says the brooding artwork reflects a wave of religious fervour that engulfed the artist's hometown at the time.
Botticelli is swept up in these changes, and we find a very profound shift in his artistic mood. So here we see a very human depiction of the Redeemer, of the Godhead, as Botticelli envisioned him later in life.
Botticelli's most famous works, such as The Birth of Venus, are beautiful, sumptuous affairs full of colourful details to delight the viewer. But as the artist aged and embraced religion, his style was markedly different.
This later moment in Botticelli's career, we find the artist being much more direct. We do away with the courtly beauties of an earlier period, such as the 1480s, and we just have direct access, much more stark interpretation of what we're looking at. So here is the artist and us, the viewer, confronting and trying to relate to the artist's vision of God.
The painting was previously thought to have been created by artists from Botticelli's workshop, but it has since been deemed to be the work of the Florentine master himself.
We have had extremely strong support from all involved about the beauty and importance of this autograph work by Botticelli.
It was last sold at auction in 1963 for £10,000 and has remained in the same private collection since then. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
Coming up, the tech industry heads to Las Vegas for the annual Consumer Electronics Show. City officials say there's proof that businesses are once again ready to make deals in person. And a dinosaur left footprints on a Welsh beach, and they're still there after 200 million years. Find out more after the break.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. Before all this started, I had already written in my memoir, I dedicate this book to anyone that's looking for hope. Well, right now, we're all looking for hope. I believe that my story is going to bring inspiration and hope to everyone. By the time you're done reading my book, you will believe that with God, all things are possible. To thank you all for your support, I'm offering some of my best prices ever on MyPillow products, including this exclusive bundle. You get my book and these 5 MyPillows. They all have beautiful scenes and verses from the Bible, such as Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. This 6-pack bundle is regularly $219. Now it's just $99.98 and free shipping with your promo code. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below. Thank you and God bless.
The tech industry is flocking to Las Vegas for the annual Consumer Electronics Show, or CES. City officials say there's proof that businesses are once again ready to make deals face-to-face, even amid the Omicron variant. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
The annual CES Gadget Convention was held virtually last year. This year, there will be a hybrid of online and in person. The convention has been cut to 3 days instead of 4, following a rise of CCP virus cases and the withdrawal of some of its best-known tech presenters. But confidence is still high.
Having shows like CES come in person, even if it's with a smaller footprint, is an important step in our recovery efforts and for their industry as well. And we're so excited they have over 2,000 exhibitors who will be displaying, and even despite having some drop out, they even had over 100 more exhibitors sign up in the past couple weeks.
Las Vegas depends on tourism and the convention business. CES is one of the biggest conventions the city hosts. About 170,000 people attended 2020's gathering.
CES is the global technology show in the world. It is the largest, most prestigious show, and deals get done at CES. There are a tremendous amount of exhibitors who are looking to book business for the years and decades ahead.
Despite a year-long shutdown due to the pandemic, the city booked a full schedule of events since it reopened in 2021, hosting more than 40 conventions between June and December.
And even during the height of the pandemic in 2021, we signed deals with 14 new customers to come inside the building for shows they're going to host in 2022 and 2023. And starting with CES, this represents one of 45 shows we have on the books here at the Las Vegas Convention Center in 2022.
Organizers decided to bring CES back this year, requiring all attendees to show proof of vaccination. Masks are also required indoors at all events. Free rapid tests are being distributed to all attendees. CES is set to open on January 5th, following 2 days of media previews. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A dinosaur left footprints on a Welsh beach, and they're still there 200 million years later. Scientists in the UK found the tracks in 2020. London's Natural History Museum says they date back to the Triassic period and are thought to be made by a sauropod or one of their relatives. Using these footprints, scientists can determine how this dinosaur walked. The museum says the tracks will remain on the beach until they're worn away by the tide. A CCTV camera in Washington, D.C. captured the heavy snowstorm that ripped through the area yesterday. Here's the footage. The time-lapse video was taken from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can see the snow completely covers this Christmas tree. The National Weather Service reported that over 8 inches of snow fell in the capital. The severe weather forced federal government offices to close in Washington, and dozens of schools across the region started late or were closed for the day. President Biden and his staff were briefly stuck on Air Force One as plows cleared the airport runway. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.